Well, folks, I guess this is it. This will be wrapping up my revisit of... crap, I've got Fantastic Beasts after this. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 2. So, this is going to wrap up the primary series of Harry Potter, the ones that are actually adapted from original source material, as opposed to the Fantastic Beasts, which are basically direct film creations. So, this one is a difficult one to assess in a lot of ways. Because if you try and look at it as a film in isolation, as a completely self-contained thing unto itself, it is pretty good. It's decent. But that's really shortchanging it because it's not a self-contained thing unto itself. It is the culmination of the 7 films that came before it. And judging it on that merit, it's pretty successful. The word that kept coming to my mind as I was watching this thing was cathartic. This has basically almost all the moments that you would want to have if you're going to be wrapping this thing up and we're seeing these characters for ostensibly the last time. It gave the notes that you would want to see. It nailed the moments that you would want it to nail. And I'm not going to give a spoiler warning. This has been a revisit. These are movies that have been out for a while, so, you should know the deal. But things like Neville killing Nagini, that was wonderfully cathartic. Or Molly Weasley taking down Bellatrix Lestrange. Ditto. Right there. That was awesome. Heck, the bridge blowing up, set by Seamus and Neville running away from that. Neville gets some really good moments in this thing, and it's just, love it. And there's just a lot of really powerful, even smaller moments, not even just big action moments, but, Maggie Smith, McGonagall, summoning the statues and they're marching past her and she just gets this little giddy moment of, I've always wanted to use that spell. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And there's so many little moments like that sprinkled across this thing in small moments and in big ones. And that, for me, is what makes this so enjoyable. And it's not just stuff that's paying off or giving moments for characters that we've seen this whole time. There are things completely unique to this film that we're seeing for the first time that are great little touches. One of my favorite moments in, honestly, the entire franchise is that dragon breaking out of Gringotts, and it gets into the sunlight and it stops. It stops because it's so pale. You can tell looking at it that if it ever saw sunlight, it has been who knows how long, and it just stops in the sun. They actually have to basically spur it effectively to get it moving again, but that moment of just letting the thing have its moment in the sun, literally. I love that. I'm glad the movie took a second to slow down and give us that. I love it. And, the stuff that's been good throughout the series, throughout the franchise at this point, continues to be good. All the actors nailed these parts. They know what they're doing. They're really, really good at it. Daniel Radcliffe, honestly, I think gives some of his best work here. I think Daniel Radcliffe, as an actor, especially at this point, he is very good at conveying thought and conveying emotional engagement. Because I think his best moments are not lines of dialogue. He delivers his dialogue well also, but I think his moments confronting Snape as Snape is dying, or talking with Dumbledore on the Heavenly King's Cross, or just seeing his loved ones around him before he drops the Resurrection Stone. So much of what he conveys in those moments has nothing to do with lines, and it's all in his face, and he does a wonderful job conveying a lot for a character who is going through a lot. It is really, really good stuff. There are some little things here and there, some little hiccups that I don't know how much to hold the film to task for. So, Rowena Ravenclaw's diadem and or the ghost of her daughter, the Gray Lady. It's not like it's out of place, but it is a little bit jarring because we really haven't seen ghosts being around in... God, I mean, the last time I can remember it being prominent at all was the 4th film. We got a little bit of Moaning Myrtle. That's been about it since then. And she herself had never been established in the previous films. Now, like I said, I don't know if I want to take the films to task for that, because I suspect that had they known at the time they were filming the earlier films, had they known at an earlier point that she was going to come back and be important, that they would have established her earlier than they did. So I'm not sure it's necessarily the filmmaker's fault that things like that are the case in a few instances, that being the most prominent one that comes to my mind. But when you're looking at the thing as a whole, as a finished piece of work, even if I set aside the fact that they didn't know the end when they started making these films, removing that behind-the-scenes context of the process of them being made and just looking at it as a narrative unto itself, yeah, she should have been established earlier in the series, and she just wasn't. So that stands as a flaw, and it is a flaw that sort of... And things like that, things sort of coming up or paying off, or things that are introduced fresh that should be callbacks, but aren't really, because the things that they were calling back to were earlier in the books, but not earlier in the film series. Stuff like that becomes more of an issue the longer these films have been out. Like, at the time seeing this in the theater wasn't a huge deal because I've been watching it being released as it goes. But things like that become bigger issues as the things become this complete experience that you can binge through and notice that kind of came out of nowhere. So there's little things like that. If I have like a major complaint, it's not even like... It's not major by my standards, because by my standards, a major complaint is like a narrative breakdown. It's a massive character flub. It's something at the story structure level. And this isn't. This is strictly a visualization, but I really feel like they dropped the ball, and it's kind of a crucial moment. And that is Voldemort's death. Now, as I mentioned, Neville getting Nagini, super. Love it. Like, oh God, Neville's so good in this one. But the whole thing of what is supposed to be happening, of Harry and Dumbledore, with their wands, back and, sort of going back and forth, and the spell sort of goes back at Voldemort, and he loses the Elder Wand. The way it's visually done, it does not do a very good job of conveying that Voldemort's spell actually came back and hit him. It just looks like it got back to the wand and then fizzled. It doesn't really look like it hit him, and then it looks like he just kind of fades and falls apart, which it's a kind of a weak, visually realized death for him, which is unfortunate and a little frustrating, because I think overall it's been well built up to, but something about the visualization of that moment doesn't quite work. It's not a complete failure, at least I don't think it is, but it should have been clearer what was going on, and instead it kind of lands as oh, okay, so I guess that's it then. But overall, I really do enjoy this one. This one more than any other film in the series just thunders through on momentum, because the vast majority of the runtime is the battle at Hogwarts. And despite that, even as the battle is raging on, it's able to take slower moments intermittently because of the way, the assault backs off for a little bit. We have the stuff with Snape. the film is able to find a way, without feeling like it's forgotten there's a battle going on, give us quieter, slower moments. So it's not just bombastic all the way through. But this thing has the strongest and most propellant forward momentum of any of the films in the franchise. And it is closer to a roller coaster sort of a film than any of the rest of them have been. That doesn't necessarily make it better, but it does mean that because it's just powering through and giving me all these moments that I find very rewarding as a viewer, it's hard for me to take a lot of issue. I think this is an odd thing. I'm not sure if I've ever mentioned it before. I think in general, unless something happens where it completely loses you, I think it's oftentimes easier to forgive a faster-paced film its flaws because it moves past them so quickly. Whereas when something is a slower, more deliberate pace, if something isn't working, you have more time to dwell on it. Whereas if the thing is just barreling forward, you go, oh, that could have, oh, wait, something new. And I feel like this kind of has that going for it a bit. Whereas other films in the franchise, if something's not quite working, it's usually going to be lingered on and drawn out for a little bit longer. Now, again, that doesn't inherently actually make this a better film, but it does make it one that I have a lot fewer notes on just because they don't feel like they matter as much in this one. So take that for whatever it's worth. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, I found it to be a very rewarding completion for the original series. Have you rewatched it lately? What'd you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments and let's talk about it. Stuff to do down there as well. You can support me on Patreon, help this thing going. Failing that, or even if you also do that, you can, in addition, like, subscribe, share this, leave comments. All that stuff helps me out in some way, and I appreciate all of it. So those are some options. Go forth and do those things, or don't. You don't have to, because end of the day, you're the council, I'm just running the meetings, and until next time, this council's adjourned.